The text message glowed on Vanessa's phone at 11:47 p.m., and her giggle cut through our bedroom like a rusty knife. "Just a colleague," she said, clutching the device to her chest when she caught me looking. "Work stuff, you know how it is." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I knew how it was, all right. 23 years of marriage teaches you to read the signs like a roadmap to hell. The way she angled her body away from me, the secretive smile that never reached her eyes, the sudden interest in working late at the advertising agency. My wife was having an affair, and she thought I was too stupid to notice. "Sure, honey," I said, rolling over in our king-size bed that suddenly felt like a canyon between us. "Work stuff." My name is Ethan Ford, and I used to be the kind of guy who trusted people. Used to be the kind of husband who believed his wife when she said she loved him. Used to be a lot of things before I learned that sometimes the person sleeping next to you is planning your destruction while you dream. I'm 44, an accountant turned handyman after the firm downsized me 3 years ago. Vanessa always said it was temporary, that I'd find something better. Now I wondered if she'd been hoping I'd find something permanent, like a grave. The next morning, I watched her get ready for work with new eyes. Every movement seemed calculated, every word measured. She wore the red dress I'd bought her for our anniversary, the one she claimed made her look fat. Apparently Derek Harlan didn't think so. Yeah, I knew his name. Had known for weeks, actually. You don't survive 20 years in accounting without learning how to follow a paper trail, and you don't survive 3 years as a handyman without learning how to be invisible. Amazing what people don't notice when they think you're just another blue-collar nobody fixing their sink. "I'll be late tonight," Vanessa said, applying lipstick with surgical precision. "Big presentation for the Morrison account." "The Morrison account," I repeated, sipping my coffee. "That's the third one this month." She froze for just a second, a tell I'd learned to watch for. "It's a complicated client. Derek thinks I'm the only one who can handle it." Derek thinks. Derek says. Derek wants. For 3 months, every conversation had been seasoned with references to her boss, like salt in an open wound. "I'm sure he does," I said. After she left, I sat in my basement workshop, surrounded by the tools of my new trade. Hammers, saws, levels, instruments of creation and destruction, depending on your perspective. I'd been building something down here, working on it late at night when Vanessa thought I was just puttering around. A project she'd never seen, never asked about. My phone buzzed. A text from Doug McKenna, my old drinking buddy from the Crooked Anchor. "Saw your wife at the Seaside Inn yesterday. Thought you should know." The Seaside Inn. 15 miles outside town, the kind of place that charged by the hour and didn't ask questions. I'd suspected, but knowing hit different, like the difference between hearing about a car crash and being in one. I went upstairs and did something I'd never done in 23 years of marriage. I went through Vanessa's things. Her laptop was password protected, but after 2 decades together, I knew her better than she thought. Her mother's maiden name plus our wedding date, predictable as sunrise. The folder was labeled Personal Projects, and it contained enough evidence to end our marriage and Derek's career. Photos, emails, receipts from hotels and restaurants I'd never seen. A digital diary of betrayal, organized with the same attention to detail she brought to her advertising campaigns. But the worst part wasn't the affair itself. It was the planning. Email threads discussing how to handle the Ethan situation. Conversations about my life insurance policy. Speculation about whether I'd fight a divorce or just roll over like he always does. That last part stung because it was true. I had always rolled over. When she criticized my career change, when she dismissed my opinions, when she made me feel small in 1,000 tiny ways. I'd taken it all with a smile and a, "Yes, dear." Not anymore. I spent the afternoon installing a GPS tracker on her car and a hidden camera in our bedroom. If she wanted to play games, I'd learned the rules. And unlike Vanessa, I'd always been good with numbers, including the odds of getting away with something. She came home at midnight, reeking of expensive cologne and lies. "How was the Morrison account?" I asked from the kitchen table, where I'd been waiting with a cup of coffee and a manila folder. "Exhausting," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Derek really put me through the ringer." "I bet he did." I slid the folder across the table. "Take a look." She opened it and went white. Photos of her and Derek at the Seaside Inn, printouts of their text messages, copies of credit card receipts. Her whole secret world laid out like evidence at a trial. "Ethan, I can explain." "Sit down," I said quietly. "Show's just starting." Vanessa's hands shook as she flipped through the evidence. Each page was a nail in the coffin of our marriage, and I'd hammered them in with the precision of a craftsman. 23 years of trust destroyed by her own carelessness. "This isn't what it looks like," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Hard to explain away hotel receipts and text messages planning romantic getaways. "Really? Because it looks like my wife has been screwing her boss for 3 months while planning to cash in my life insurance." I leaned back in my chair, amazed at how calm I felt. "But please, enlighten me." She tried anger first, the righteous indignation of the caught criminal. "How dare you spy on me? This is invasion of privacy." "Privacy?" I laughed, and the sound surprised both of us. It wasn't bitter or broken. It was genuinely amused. "Honey, privacy ended when you started using our credit card to buy lingerie for another man." Then came the tears. Big, theatrical sobs that might have worked on someone who hadn't spent 3 weeks watching her practice them in the mirror before her late meetings. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I'm so sorry. It just happened, and I didn't know how to stop it." "Just happened," I repeated. "Like accidentally booking hotel rooms, like accidentally discussing my life insurance with your lover, like accidentally planning to frame me for domestic violence so you could get a restraining order and keep the house?" Her face went from pale to gray. That last email thread had been buried deep in her deleted folder, but I'd always been thorough with data recovery. "You don't understand," she whispered. Derek said a lot of things, including how much he's looking forward to spending my money after you get rid of me." I stood up, and she flinched. After 23 years of marriage, my own wife was afraid of me. The irony was delicious. "But here's the thing, Vanessa. I'm not going anywhere. You are." "What do you mean?" I smiled, and later I'd remember this as the moment everything changed, the moment I stopped being the victim and started being something else entirely. I mean, I've already filed for divorce. I mean, I've already moved our joint accounts to a new bank where only I have access. I mean, I've already sent copies of your little love letters to Derek's wife, your HR department, and that private investigator Derek's wife hired last month. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "You can't do this." "I can, and I did. You wanted to play games, sweetheart? Let me show you how a numbers man plays games." The next morning, I drove to the Crooked Anchor for the first time in months. Doug was already there, nursing a beer and reading the local paper. He looked up when I walked in, his weathered face creasing into a grin. "Well, look what the cat dragged in. Heard you had some excitement at home." News traveled fast in a town like ours. Mrs. Carmody, our neighbor, had probably seen the police cruiser that came by when Vanessa tried to file a complaint about the missing money. Hard to claim theft when your husband's name is on all the accounts. "You could say that. I ordered a whiskey. Neat. Turns out my wife's been taking night classes in adultery." Doug whistled low. "Derek Harlan, right? That pompous ass from the ad agency?" "You know about Derek?" "Brother, everybody knows about Derek. Man's been working his way through half the married women in town. Your Vanessa's just the latest." He took a long pull of his beer. "Question is, what you gonna do about it?" I'd been asking myself the same thing. The old Ethan would have quietly divorced her, split everything 50-50, and slunk away to lick his wounds. But the old Ethan had passed away somewhere between reading those emails and realizing his wife had been planning his destruction. "I'm going to teach them both a lesson about consequences," I said. Doug raised his glass. "About damn time." That afternoon, I paid a visit to Derek's office. The advertising agency occupied a converted mill downtown, all glass and chrome and pretentious modern art. Derek's corner office overlooked the harbor, and he was standing at the window when his secretary showed me in. "Ethan Ford," he said without turning around. "I wondered when you'd show up." Derek was everything I wasn't. Tall, handsome, successful, the kind of man who wore $1,000 suits and drove cars that cost more than I made in a year, the kind of man who thought other people's wives were just another acquisition. "We need to talk," I said. "Do we?" He turned around, and I saw the smug confidence that had probably charmed dozens of women into his bed. "Because I think everything that needs to be said has already been said." "Not everything." I sat down without being invited. "See, I've been thinking about your situation. Married man, pillar of the community, having an affair with a subordinate. That's the kind of thing that could really damage a reputation." His smile faltered slightly. "Are you threatening me?" "Threatening? And no, I'm just thinking out loud about how these things tend to play out. Wife finds out, files for divorce, takes half of everything. Company finds out, starts asking questions about harassment, hostile work environment. Clients start wondering if they can trust someone who lies to his own wife." "You don't have the balls," Derek said, but I could hear the uncertainty creeping into his voice. I pulled out my phone and showed him a screenshot of an email I'd sent that morning. "Already done. Your wife got copies of everything an hour ago. HR gets theirs Monday morning, and I've got a meeting with the Morrison account rep. You know, the one Vanessa's been supposedly working so hard to impress. Tuesday at lunch. Derek's face went through several interesting color changes. You snake. That's Mr. Snake to you. I stood up. Oh, and Derek, stay away from my wife. The divorce will be final in 6 months, and until then, she's still mine. I left him standing there, probably calculating how much this was going to cost him. It was a good feeling, walking away from someone who'd underestimated me. I could get used to it. The next few days were like watching dominoes fall. Derek's wife, Patricia, had apparently been suspicious for months and hired that private investigator Doug mentioned. My evidence just confirmed what she already suspected, and she moved fast. By Thursday, Derek was sleeping in his office, and Patricia was meeting with the best divorce attorney in the county. Vanessa tried damage control, showing up at my workshop with tears and apologies and a low-cut dress that used to work magic on me. Used to. Ethan, please. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. Work things out. Work what out? I was rebuilding a carburetor, my hands steady despite the rage burning in my chest. Work out how you plan to ruin me? Work out how you've been stealing from our accounts to pay for hotel rooms? Work out how you told your lover that I was just a pathetic loser who'd never amount to anything? She flinched at that last one. It had been in an email from 2 months ago, part of a longer conversation about how easy it would be to manipulate me. I never meant those things. I was confused. Confused. I set down my wrench and looked at her. Really looked at her, maybe for the first time in years. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with in college. But now I could see the calculation behind her eyes, the way she tilted her head and bit her lip because she knew it used to make me melt. You know what confuses me, Vanessa? How I wasted 23 years on someone who thinks love is a con game. It doesn't have to be over, she whispered. It was over the moment you decided I was disposable. That weekend, I ran into Tom Bradley at the hardware store. Tom had been one of my closest friends for 15 years, until recently. We used to have dinner together every month, our families celebrating birthdays and holidays like one big extended clan. But over the past few months, those invitations had dried up, and now I knew why. Ethan, he said, clearly uncomfortable. How are you holding up? Better than expected. You? He shifted his weight, avoiding eye contact. Look, about what's been happening. Sarah and we didn't know what to think when Vanessa told us. Told you what? About the drinking, the anger issues. She said you'd been getting violent, that she was scared. He finally met my eyes. She showed us bruises, man. What were we supposed to think? The world tilted slightly. Bruises. On her arms, her shoulders. She said you'd been grabbing her, pushing her around when you drank. Tom's voice was carefully neutral, the tone you use when you're talking to someone you think might be dangerous. She asked us not to say anything because she was afraid of what you might do. I felt something cold and sharp settle in my stomach. And you believed her. We've known you for 15 years, Ethan, but we've known Vanessa just as long, and she was terrified. What were we supposed to do? What indeed? I thought about all the times I'd reached for her in the past few months, trying to reconnect, trying to save our marriage, how she'd pulled away, claimed to be tired or stressed, how she'd worn long sleeves even in summer heat. Did she happen to show you these bruises right after she started working late? Tom frowned. I don't remember exactly when, because I do. I remember every conversation we've had about this, Tom. And I remember that you stopped inviting me to poker night right around the time Vanessa started her campaign to isolate me from my friends. That's not... We weren't trying to isolate anyone. No? Then why didn't anyone call me? Why didn't anyone ask for my side of the story? I stepped closer, and Tom instinctively backed away. Because it's easier to believe the worst about someone than to admit you might have been played. I left him standing there and drove straight home. Vanessa was in the kitchen, making dinner like nothing had happened, like she hadn't spent months systematically destroying my relationships while planning my demise. We need to talk, I said. She looked up from the stove, and I saw a flicker of fear cross her face. Good. About what? About the bruises you showed Tom and Sarah, about how you convinced my friends that I was beating you. I leaned against the doorframe, blocking her exit. That was smart, Vanessa. Really smart. Turn everyone against me before you pull the trigger. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. You've been planning this for months, haven't you? Get Derek to fall for you. Isolate me from my support system, build a case for domestic violence so you can get a restraining order and keep the house. I smiled, and she took a step back. The only problem is, I figured it out. You're scaring me, she whispered. Good, because you should be scared. You should be terrified. Because everything you've built, every lie you've told, every friend you've turned against me, it's all about to come crashing down. That night, I made some calls. Started with Tom, then moved on to the rest of our social circle. I didn't try to convince anyone of anything, I just asked questions. Did Vanessa mention when these alleged incidents happened? Because I've got receipts showing I was working out of town those days. She said I grabbed her arm? Interesting. Because I've got security footage from the hardware store showing both of us that day, and she seemed pretty happy then. Medical records? No, she never went to a doctor. Strange, don't you think? For someone who was supposedly being abused. By Monday morning, doubt was creeping in. By Tuesday, Tom called to apologize. By Wednesday, Sarah was asking if there was anything she could do to help. The truth has a way of surfacing, like oil on water, and Vanessa's lies were starting to look pretty slick. Friday night at the Crooked Anchor was usually quiet, but word had gotten around about my situation, and the place was buzzing with gossip. Small towns thrive on drama, and my marriage had become the entertainment of the week. I was nursing my second whiskey when Derek walked in. He looked like hell, unshaven, rumpled clothes, the kind of desperate edge that comes from watching your life implode in real time. He spotted me immediately and made a beeline for my table. "This ends now," he said, loud enough for half the bar to hear. "Does it?" I didn't look up from my drink, because from where I'm sitting, it's just getting started. You've destroyed my marriage, cost me my job, turned half the town against me. His voice was shaking with rage. What more do you want? Justice, I said simply. You took something that belonged to me. Now I'm taking something that belongs to you. Your wife came to me, Ford. She wanted out of your pathetic excuse for a marriage. That got my attention. I looked up and saw the crowd gathering. Doug was behind the bar, his hand resting on the baseball bat he kept for troublemakers. Mrs. Carmody was at her usual table, leaning forward like she was watching her favorite soap opera. Is that what she told you? I stood up slowly. That she wanted out. She said you were a loser, a failure, that she deserved better than some washed-up handyman who couldn't even keep a real job. The bar went quiet. In a place like the Crooked Anchor, where half the customers were blue-collar workers, them was fighting words. She said a lot of things, I agreed. But here's what she didn't tell you. She's been playing you from day one. You think you were her first affair? You think you're special? Derek's face went pale. You're lying. Am I? Ask her about Mike Peterson from the Morrison account. Ask her about those weekend conferences she went to last year. Ask her about the credit card bills from hotels in cities where she supposedly had business meetings. I could see the doubt creeping in, the same doubt that had been eating at me for months. The horrible realization that the person you trusted most in the world was a stranger wearing a familiar face. She loves me, Derek said, but his voice lacked conviction. She loves what you can give her, the fancy dinners, the expensive hotels, the promise of a better life. But love? I laughed. Derek, she doesn't even love me, and I've been paying her bills for 23 years. That's when Tom Bradley walked in with his brother Jake and their friend Steve Morrison, 3 guys I'd known since high school, 3 guys who'd believed Vanessa's lies about me being abusive. They saw Derek and me squaring off and immediately moved to intervene. Ethan, Tom said carefully, maybe you should head home. Why? Because you think I might get violent? Because my wife told you I was dangerous? She was protecting herself, Jake said. We saw the bruises. Makeup, I said flatly. Foundation and eyeshadow. Amazing what you can do with the right cosmetics and a good story. That's a serious accusation, Steve said. It's a serious situation. I pulled out my phone and showed them a video I'd taken that morning. This is Vanessa getting ready for work today. Watch her arm, the one that supposedly had finger-shaped bruises last month. They watched in silence as the video showed my wife carefully applying makeup to create the illusion of injuries, practicing her frightened victim expression in the mirror. Jesus Christ, Tom whispered. She's been playing all of us, I said, turning you against me, convincing Derek he was her savior, setting up the perfect scenario to get rid of me and take everything I've worked for. Derek was staring at the phone like it contained footage of his own execution. She could, and she did. The question is, what are we going to do about it? The answer came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Carmody stood up from her table, all 5 feet of righteous fury, and pointed a gnarled finger at Derek. You should be ashamed of yourself, Derek Harlan, breaking up a marriage, destroying a family, your poor wife, having to find out about your carrying on from strangers. It wasn't like that, Derek protested. Wasn't it? Because I've got eyes, young man. I've seen you sneaking around, seen that woman of yours lying to her husband, seen the whole sordid mess." She turned to Tom and his friends. "And you three should be ashamed too, turning your backs on a friend without even hearing his side." The bar erupted in murmurs of agreement. In a small town, Mrs. Carmody's opinion carried weight, and she just delivered judgment. "Ethan," Tom said quietly, "I'm sorry. We should have known better." "Yes, you should have." I finished my whiskey and set the glass down. "But you didn't, and that tells me everything I need to know about our friendship." I walked toward the door, then turned back to Derek. "Oh, and Derek, Vanessa's moving out tomorrow. You're welcome to her, but I should warn you. She's expensive, and you're about to be unemployed." The last thing I heard as I left was Mrs. Carmody's voice cutting through the silence. "Some people get exactly what they deserve." Saturday morning came gray and drizzling, the kind of weather that matched my mood perfectly. Vanessa was in the kitchen when I came downstairs, sitting at the table with a cup of coffee and a look of defeat I'd never seen before. "Derek told me about last night," she said without looking up. "Did he? And what exactly did he tell you?" "That you showed everyone the video. That you humiliated him in front of half the town." She finally met my eyes. "That you destroyed any chance we had of being together." I poured myself coffee and sat across from her, studying the woman I'd married 23 years ago. She looked older somehow, worn down by the weight of her own deceptions. "Is that what you think this is about? Your relationship with Derek? Isn't it?" "No, Vanessa. This is about you trying to destroy me. This is about you turning my friends against me, planning to frame me for domestic violence, discussing my life insurance with your lover like I was already gone." I leaned forward. "This is about you forgetting that I'm not the pathetic loser you thought I was." She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee like it might contain answers. "What do you want from me?" she asked finally. "Nothing. I don't want anything from you anymore." "Then why? Why go to all this trouble? Why not just divorce me quietly and move on?" It was a fair question, and I'd been asking myself the same thing for weeks. Why not just walk away? Why burn everything down? "Because you didn't just cheat on me, Vanessa. You tried to erase me. You turned my friends against me, planned to take everything I'd worked for, and discussed having me ruined like you were planning a vacation." I stood up. "You wanted me gone?" "Well, congratulations. The man you married is gone, but the man who's left isn't going to disappear quietly." She started crying then. Real tears this time, not the practiced performance she'd been giving Derek. "I never meant for it to go this far." "Yes, you did. Every step was calculated, every move was planned. You just didn't count on me fighting back." That afternoon, I drove to the old amusement park on the outskirts of town. It had been closed for 15 years, a victim of changing times and corporate competition, but the rides were still there, rusting monuments to better days. I'd been coming here since I was a kid, and it seemed like the right place for what I had planned. I sent identical text messages to Vanessa and Derek. "Meet me at Wonderland Park at 8 p.m. Come alone. I have something that belongs to both of you." The sun was setting when they arrived, Derek's expensive car looking out of place among the weeds and broken concrete. They came together, which surprised me. I'd expected them to coordinate, but seeing them side by side, her in her designer clothes, him in his $1,000 suit, they looked like exactly what they were, two people who thought they were better than everyone else. "What do you want, Ethan?" Vanessa called out as they approached the old carousel where I was waiting. "To give you both a choice," I said. "See, I've been thinking about justice, about consequences, about what happens when people think they can destroy other people without paying a price." "We get it," Derek said. "You're angry. You want revenge. What's it going to take to end this?" I smiled and pulled out a manila envelope. "Funny you should ask." Inside were copies of documents I'd been preparing for weeks. Financial records showing Derek's embezzlement from the advertising agency. Money he'd been skimming to pay for his affairs. Evidence of Vanessa's insurance fraud from 3 years ago, when she'd claimed our car was stolen instead of admitting she'd crashed it while drunk. Tax records showing unreported income from Derek's consulting work. "This is everything I've gathered on both of you over the past month," I said. "Enough to put you both in prison for a very long time." They stared at the papers like they were looking at their own final verdicts. "You can't prove any of this," Derek said, but his voice was shaking. "Can't I? Because I've got bank records, email trails, witness statements. I've got security footage of you accessing client accounts after hours, Vanessa. I've got receipts from Derek's off-the-books consulting work. I've got everything." "What do you want?" Vanessa whispered. "I want you both to disappear. Leave town, tonight. Don't come back." "That's insane," Derek protested. "I have a life here, a career." Had, I corrected. You had a life here. You had a career, but that was before you decided to destroy mine. And if we don't? Vanessa asked. I held up my phone. Then I send copies of everything to the police, the IRS, and every news outlet in the state. Your choice. They looked at each other, and I could see the calculation happening, the desperate math of people who'd finally run out of options. You snake, Derek said. That's Mr. Snake, I replied. And you've got 1 hour to be out of town, or I make the calls. I walked away and left them standing there in the ruins of the amusement park, two people who'd thought they could play God with other people's lives. The poetic justice wasn't lost on me. They were surrounded by the broken dreams of someone else's failed empire, just like they'd tried to build their happiness on the ruins of my marriage. An hour later, I was back at the Crooked Anchor when Doug told me he'd seen Derek's car heading toward the highway with two people inside. Mrs. Carmody, who seemed to have spies everywhere, confirmed that Vanessa had been seen loading suitcases into Derek's trunk. Think they'll stay gone? Doug asked. They don't have a choice, I said. I've got enough evidence to bury them both, and they know it. What if they call your bluff? I smiled and raised my glass. Who says I'm bluffing? 3 months later, the divorce was final. Vanessa never contested it, never asked for alimony, never even hired a lawyer. She just signed the papers and disappeared, leaving behind 23 years of marriage like it had never happened. Derek's wife got everything in their divorce. The house, the cars, the bank accounts. Last I heard, he was working at a used car lot 2 states away, and Vanessa was waiting tables at a truck stop diner. Some people might say I went too far, that revenge isn't worth destroying 2 lives. But those people never had their own life systematically dismantled by someone who was supposed to love them. They never had their friends turned against them, never had their trust weaponized, never had someone discuss their passing like a business transaction. Justice isn't always pretty, and it's not always fair. But sometimes it's exactly what people deserve. I kept the evidence, just in case they ever decide to come back. But I don't think they will. Some lessons stick, and some people learn that actions have consequences. As for me, I'm still in the same house, still working as a handyman, still drinking at the Crooked Anchor on Friday nights. But I'm not the same man who trusted blindly, who believed the best in people, who thought love was enough to overcome anything. That man passed away the night I found those emails. What's left is someone harder, someone smarter, someone who understands that sometimes the only way to win is to make sure the other side loses everything. Tom Bradley and I are friends again, though it's different now. He knows what he did, and I know what he's capable of when things get difficult. Trust, once broken, never quite fits back together the same way. Mrs. Carmody still watches everything from her window, still knows everyone's business before they do. She nods approvingly when she sees me, like I've passed some test I didn't know I was taking, and sometimes, late at night in my workshop, I think about the man I used to be, the man who believed in love and trust and the basic goodness of people. I miss him sometimes, but I don't regret what I became. Because in the end, the world is full of predators who count on their victims being too civilized to fight back. They count on people like the old me, people who turn the other cheek, who forgive and forget, who think being the bigger person means letting others walk all over them. But sometimes, just sometimes, the prey evolves. Sometimes the victim becomes something else entirely. And sometimes, the people who thought they were hunters discover they've been stalking something with bigger teeth. Vanessa and Derek learned that lesson the hard way. They thought they were playing with a sheep and discovered they'd awakened a wolf. And wolves, as any good hunter knows, never forget a scent.